Hey WILDR folks, Alicia here. 10 years ago this summer, I ran my first 50K down in Helena, Montana. And this year, I went back to the scene of the crime to see if 10 years later, I could beat that time from my first ever race. I hear time and time again from clients that they were fittest in their 20s, but I've learned a lot in the last 10 years about taking sports science and applying it to time outside. And although I know I'm gonna hear in the comments that 30 is still young by tons of metric, it comes with different challenges than I had when I was in my 20s. From my responsibilities owning and running WILDR to help people get fit for their own adventures, to my responsibilities within the community and keeping and running a gym and home. I feel like my time is stretched a lot more now than it was 10 years ago. And although I wasn't elite in my 20s, I was more of a ski racer than a runner, I still pulled some not bad times. I was running about a 20-minute 5K. My first marathon I ran in 3.5 hours. And I had just finished a degree in kinesiology, so in theory, I knew everything I needed to do well at that ultra. And to be honest, going into this race, standing at that starting line, I still did not know if I was going to be faster or not. So we're gonna run through the race, talk about how it went, and then at the end, I'm gonna tell you if I was faster or not. But while we go along, I'm gonna tell you about some of the things that I've learned in the last 10 years. In fact, 10 things I've learned in the last 10 years that have helped me help others for their outdoor adventures and help myself. Now, stick around if you aren't a runner, because I do feel like these tips apply to every outdoor sport. And the first thing I learned affected the way I trained. So let's talk about it first. When I did my first 50K, I did not look at the course map or the elevation profile before the day of the event. I knew it was going up and into the mountains, so I tried to incorporate that into my running. But now I know that the distance is the least important thing about the event you're doing. What do I mean by that? Well, if you look at your vertical gain, then you can tell how much up and down you're going to be doing during your race course. And you can train those specific sections. So for instance, I knew that in the first 10K, there was a 6K chunk with about 600 meters of elevation gain. So I found that exact slope near me to try it out, to test it out, so that I knew what it would feel like when I was running it. And another thing I gained from having done this race before is knowing what the trail actually looked like. Because you're gonna be moving a lot slower on rocky, rooty terrain than you are on wide open paths. And so if you're on wide open paths, you're gonna wanna train faster speeds. If you have rocks and roots, you're gonna wanna incorporate that into your training as well. In fact, that first time I ever did this course, my watch said 50K when I was still 4 kilometers from the end. And I remember not knowing where the finish line was going to be, and just every step of the way hoping that it was around the next corner. That last 4K on my first time doing this course was so slow. And the second thing that was working against me this year was the weather. Because in addition to trail conditions and elevation gain making a huge difference to how fast you're gonna travel, weather can stop or start your event, unless you know how to prepare for it. In fact, running pace can be decreased by 2 to 3% if you're running at 60 degrees, which is not that hot. At 80 degrees, the effect can be between 12 and 15%. So an 8-minute mile would jump to 8:12 if you're at 60 degrees, but then would jump to 9:06 if you're at that 80-degree mark. And this may not be a lot per mile, but when you think about 50K, about 30 miles, those compound and make a difference. The reason is your body is trying to keep you safe, and we need to keep our temperature between a certain range to continue functioning. So our body is going to slow our pace down, make us less efficient, because it is working so hard to dissipate heat. That being said, there's things you can do when it's really hot to help your body stay cool. This year, when we were running, only like 4K in before the first hill, we crossed a stream. 10 years ago, Alicia just jumped over the stream and kept going. This year's Alicia dipped my hat, dunked myself in water, and then kept going. And no one else around me did that at that point. In fact, I think some people thought I was crazy for doing it that early into the run. But the weather this year hit a high of 102 degrees by the time I finished the race. So it was, I looked, 10 degrees Celsius hotter this year than it was 10 years ago. So that was working against me on the day of, but I knew how to prepare. The other thing I did was some heat adaptation leading up to this event. And I did that in very simple ways. Like after I was finished my short training runs, I would crank the heat in the car on the way home to get a 20-minute sauna session out of my car. If you're interested in heat adaptation, I can do a whole video on it. I've learned a lot about it from friends in the running community and from the research in the last couple years. So I could do a whole video, but comment below if you want that. It applies to hiking and to running as well. But the one thing I did this year that still makes me nervous every time was do a proper taper. For 2 weeks before the race, I started to reduce my volume of training. And now because of all those reasons that I was really busy this year and that training wasn't perfect, I didn't do every workout exactly perfect, I was really nervous during my taper. You know, my brain told me just go out for one more run, get those adaptations that you can use during your race. But the thing I've learned in the last 10 years is that going in rested beats getting that one last training run. And it feels weird to reduce your volume 2 weeks before your event. But it really pays off because if you're not fully rested and recovered, then you haven't actually realized all the gains from your training. And this applies to hiking too. I tell clients all the time that week before you go or the few days before you go, focus on the packing, do your workouts, but make sure we reduce the volume. And then when you're out there, and you guys who watch my channel a lot know that I'm all about this for ski season and for running season, you gotta eat. I have this distinct memory from the first time I did this race. I was, I think 15K from the end and I came upon an aid station and they had Fig Newtons there. Don't usually eat Fig Newtons, but I put one in my mouth and it felt like all of a sudden I could run again. And what had happened was I was so out of carbohydrates that Fig Newton saved my life. This year, I aimed for me to take in 60 grams of carbs per hour when I was out on the trail, even in the beginning of the run. And now this part of the run, you don't feel like you need to eat, but the truth is you are burning so much energy when you were out there, not just from physical activity, but also from being outside, exposed to the weather, and from your mind working overtime, that eating is so important. I ran that first race with an apple in my pocket of my leggings, and we're gonna talk more about that later, and I didn't eat it for the whole race. And that apple probably would have helped me have a much better race day, but instead it stayed in my pocket. This year, I ate my fuel. And the neat thing about going back to the course was thing number 5 that I learned. When I did the course this year, I was looking around me, taking it in a way that I wasn't the first time I did this race. Now, part of that is learning effect. If I've done the race before, I can kind of look around and open up my view. But it also goes the other way. By noticing things around you, you're taking your focus away from what you might be going through. Make sure you're still checking in with your body, but by taking that view outside, you're going to enjoy the day more, which, even if you don't get a faster time, is a better outcome. You're going to be able to connect with others around you. I met people this year, and the first year I did this, I didn't really meet or talk to many people on the trail. And those are things that are going to make your day more exciting and better and go faster. They might just lead to you having a better time as well. Now, something I ran into this year that I didn't run into 10 years ago was allergies. And 10 years ago, it wasn't a very good growing year, so the grasses and everything were really low. Now, I have an allergy to Timothy grass. My husband figured out what it was. And the Timothy grass was this high this year. So I actually ended up getting an allergic reaction on the last climb that I ended up having to take some antihistamines, and I was A-okay. It never reached the point where I felt it in my throat or anything. But There are other hazards out on the trail, and I know to look and be ready for them. I had those antihistamines with me just in case that happened because I knew it was a risk factor. I also knew and was aware of the smoke levels in the area. Now, we were really lucky. The day of the race, we had less smoke in the air than even the day before. So it cleared out a bit. But I knew that if it was smoky, that I should reduce my pace and at a certain point decide not to race that day. And 35-year-old Alicia is much more prepared to pull the pin if it's not safe than 25-year-old Alicia was. Now, there is a video that I'll link in the description about knowing, depending on how much smoke there is outside, if you should slow your pace or if you should do your activity inside or not at all on that day. And that leads me to number 7, pacing. Now, 25-year-old Alicia went out of that start line hard. My thought was, it's a run, so I'm gonna run as much as I can. I'm gonna push myself. 25-year-old Alicia went hard up that first hill. Now, 35-year-old Alicia let people pass her on the first hill. And I think a younger version of me, that would have hurt my ego a little bit. But at the age I'm at now, I knew the finish time I wanted, and I had done the work to calculate how quick I probably needed to do each hill and what paces I had to maintain on uphills and downhills to hit my goal. And because of that, I was calm and confident in going slow up my first hill and then being able to maintain my pace throughout the race versus going hard, hitting a wall, and then crashing for the second half of the race. And wouldn't you know it, I passed most of those people again in the second half of the race as they were hitting that wall of their physiological ability, whereas I still felt good. And that leads me to mindset. 10 years ago, everything I did, I judged and compared to some standard that I didn't even know where it came from, but it was important that I beat it and performed and did well. And now, while I still hold myself to a high standard and enjoy testing myself out on the trails, I have some tricks and tips that I've learned throughout the years, as well as just some wisdom about how to be in the world that I think helps me when I do these long races now. The first thing, and something that I tell all my clients who are getting ready for like a big event or adventure, is that the event itself is a celebration of all the work you've done before. And by going into an event with that lightness and that focus on enjoying it because it's a celebration, even if it's a hard celebration of what you've done, there's a positive mindset that you get to enter into. And you get to use that positive mindset when things get tough. In that allergy climb, 10 years ago, I might have said it's over, I'm screwed, this is awful. But on that day, I said, okay, I have an issue. I've got an allergic reaction happening. I've got these hives happening. What do I need to do? Okay, I can keep moving, but slow my pace. I can take in a lot of water right now, and I can make sure that I take my antihistamines and then monitor every 10 minutes. And that's what I did. And the allergy cleared up, which this has never happened to me before during a run, as the allergy actually cleared up while I was running, and I was able to continue and finish the race, which is really cool. It means that my body was able to handle both that allergic reaction once I gave it some drugs, as well as able to keep me moving down the course. I also had the ability to say, this race isn't over till it's over. So when hard things happen, it's my reaction to them that's gonna mean the difference. And it's never over until I cross that finish line. Number 9, and if you know me and you've watched this channel a lot, you know that this is hard for me to admit, but okay, fine, equipment makes a difference. When I did my first 50K, I did it with a backpack. It had the single webbing waist strap, and then it had the slightly padded shoulders, and then it didn't have a strap here. It was like a promotional backpack from the company that my dad worked for, and I had used it for hiking, and so I decided to take it on this trail run, and I got chafing everywhere the backpack touched, but majorly on my back. And it would just slap. I'll put a picture up so you can see what that looked like. I also was in a pair of leggings. Weird choice now. For me, I prefer to run in shorts. Fast forward 10 years, because I enjoyed that trail race so much, despite making some mistakes along the way, I bought myself a running pack. That running pack is at the point where it is kind of falling apart. In fact, I lost my keys out of it the other day, but it has served me very well through the years. And so I must say, begrudgingly, that equipment can make a difference. Having the right gear can help you have fun and success on the trails. Now, having the right gear doesn't mean you have to splurge for the most expensive thing. I always say, if you can find a secondhand option, if you can find, just what you need. Don't buy the super expensive thing if you're just dipping your toe. Try it out first, but I will admit that equipment can make a difference. I wore merino wool. I wore a pair of running shorts that I knew and trusted. I had a hat on to keep some of the heat out. I had a sweater with a shirt with a hood, so I could dunk that in water and keep the sun off of even my neck. And those things made a difference on the day of. Now, I still had some chafing because I was dunking myself in water all day. I had a little bit of sports bra chafing here, but I came out way better than I did 10 years ago. So investing in some gear that's gonna help you appreciate the day, it can make a difference. And finally, my final thing was when I went into this race, I had the luxury of using it as a bit of a time capsule to think about the last 10 years, to think about the highs and lows of that race and all the things I've learned along the way. And the one constant was that my husband was there at both races at that finish line. Friends were there at both races at that finish line. And I think I might have taken them for granted a little more 10 years ago than I did at this race. Nothing made me happier than seeing them as I approached the finish line, and just knowing that they showed up for me and that we enjoyed that weekend together. It meant so much to me this year. And the ability to enjoy and lean in and notice is something that I have developed over the last 10 years by being outside, by, losing people that I've had outdoor adventures with. It's let me realize and cherish how important those relationships are above all else. All of that to say, I finished this year's race, even though it was 10 degrees Celsius hotter, even though it was a little smoky, I finished this race 39 minutes faster than the first time I did this course. Hilariously, I still came in 5th for women both years. This year there was a group of 3 incredible ladies from Missoula, one of which had won Western States, who was there. I was fangirling hard. Now overall, I improved from 22nd the first time I did this race to 16th this year. Now, should I do this race again in 10 years? I want you to pop in the comments if you think I should, and pop any other things you've learned over the years from outdoor adventures that I might have missed. Thanks so much for joining with me in this. I hope you have a wilder day, and we'll talk to you soon.